of the EdTech and Innovation Hub, or our Educators Forum, where we normally meet. This session is a panel discussion and not a presentation or a webinar. It's mostly teachers meeting together with fellow colleagues and professionals like you and I to share on best practices. So just to let you know, I would request that everyone, for the purposes of ensuring that we provide direction and support to our panelists, we ensure that our cameras are off first, because we want to hear and see clearly who is it that is speaking to us. And secondly, to also ensure that our bandwidth is saved. So Mchanama, I would request you to put your camera off, and Oscar as well, so that you know you can save on data, and then from there we can also get to see and hear our panelists with clarity. So just proceed to the place where you can see the camera, and you can click on it to just make sure that everything is going in the right direction. Secondly, I would like to let you know that as the session goes on, we will be able to request you to ask some questions kindly. So when you want to ask a question, or when you want to, share something that you think it's important, it will be important that you raise your hand, but also type on the chat. A normal thing that we do during panel discussions, we allow our fellow teachers to also contribute in the way of ensuring that they can share some or agreement with certain aspects. So you can use the raise, praise reaction, or you can actually type on the chat or say you are agreeing with what the speakers are going to be speaking. With me tonight, I have amazing panelists of great wisdom and experience, all the way from the African continent. Number one, we are going to be asking that, I just want to confirm first of all that we have everyone on board, by the way. I did confirm, but I'd like to just confirm that I have the four of my panelists, or our panelists tonight. I'll start with Herine. Herine said she's here. I've been able to see Mr. Maxwell. I've also been able to see Benjamin, Mr. Jim Benjamin. And I just want to confirm that my friend, Dr. Wagioko is here. So if they are here, here they are, I can see them. I'm going to ask them if it's possible to share, to turn on their cameras, because we're going to be hearing a lot from them, if they can. Oscar, I'm going to ask you to to put your camera off, so that we can be able to spotlight our amazing panelists. All right, we start with Maxwell. And so without much ado, I'm going to be requesting that we start the session. And the way to do so, I'm going to be asking Pamela. If Pamela is here, Pamela, you can lead us in a word of prayer. And from there, we can begin our session. After that, all those preliminaries, sorry.
Thank you, Felix. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Let us pray.
Good evening.
Our Father, in Jesus' name, we want to thank you for another day. We want to thank you for another session. We want to thank you for another discussion. We thank you for this gathering. Thank you for this initiative. We ask you, Lord, to continue teaching us as we start discussion tonight. Jehovah, give us wisdom, give us knowledge, improve us in everything we are going to do for the child. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And
Amen.
that's our amazing.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pamela. That is our amazing prayer warrior there, Pamela, who leads us in that session, every session. And so without much ado, allow me now to bring the topic that is at hand to all of us. In the messaging, we have called ourselves that welcome to a power-packed session on powering innovative teaching and learning in the classroom. And today we're going to be looking at the chasm, that is the gap between innovative teaching and learning in the 21st century classroom. We are going to be looking at the power and the place of the teacher in the innovative teaching and learning. We're going to review some relevant research from the experience and from what is written on innovation in the classroom. We might share possible pedagogical approaches that can speak to what we do every day. There will be innovative inclusive teaching and learning. So how do we become inclusive in our innovation for the classroom teaching and learning? We're also going to refer to some aspects of gender responsive teaching and learning, which can promote innovation. And finally, we might delve into some of the tools that teachers have used or will continue to use in the classroom to promote innovation in the way they deliver to their learners. But why are we doing this? We are doing this because it is important in this day and age, and especially for the people that we are serving, the children that we are in our classes today, that we ensure that they are prepared for the world that is here and that is going to come as the days draw nigh. There is a lot of research that has shown, and I've repeated this many times in this forum, that by 2050, the population of the African young people, 0 to 24 years, by 2040 actually, will double. The other continents of the world will have their population growing, but mostly it will be plummeting, it will be going down. The thing that stands before us is an opportunity or a missed opportunity that we can take or that which you can miss. Whether we're going to continue begging and, pressing and, seeking for help, or we are going to rise to the occasion and make a difference through the children that are in our classes today. Teachers, school leaders, and practitioners in the education sector are taking a huge role, including what you've seen from our government. A lot happening both in Rwanda and Kenya, because in this forum we have even teachers from Nigeria like Mr. David, and we are going to discuss what it is that we can do in our classes today and in the days to come to prepare our students for that. Okay, let me not, do another thing. That was just a curtain raiser. Allow me now to introduce our amazing panelists. I'm going to be asking them to introduce themselves in 1 minute. But before I do that, let me go down and bring them together for us. First, in the line, we have Mr. Maxwell Kayesi. Going to get his profile in a moment. Yes, Mr. Maxwell Kayesi is a teacher, an innovator, and a leader in the education space. He is a teacher at Karuri High School in Kiambu County. To just hear more about him, Mr. Maxwell Kayesi, I normally call him Mr. Max, is a presidential award-winning educator, having won various awards in the Kenyan context, keen to fostering a positive learning environment that enhances equity, access, and quality education for all and for all learners. With various cultural backgrounds. Maxwell maximizes individual student performance and develops student interest in technology. Now, Mr. Maxwell is a teacher who has done 2 degrees. Let me say that. He is a teacher of physics, not very sure with mathematics, but also a computer science graduate from JKUAT, and currently doing his master's in ICT integration and instructional design, among many other courses that he's doing. You can find him on LinkedIn as Mr. Maxwell Kayesi. Welcome, Mr. Max. You can see a word.
Thank you so much, Felix, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, good afternoon, colleagues joining me from different parts of the world. As you've heard, Maxwell is my name, a very passionate teacher indeed, working collaboratively with other educators in this Kenyan space and across the borders in Africa at large to try and improve the quality of teaching and, of course, improve the learning outcomes for our future leaders. Remember, we have an Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, and therefore we have a big role as educators to realize this clarion call by the African Union. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maxwell. That is our amazing Maxwell. Next in line, we have Mr. Benjamin Kuradusenge. I might say his name wrongly, but I'll call him Benja Benja and I are good friends. Benjamin is from the the United Kingdom of Rwanda. And I'm going to bring to you his greetings even before he comes on board. But meanwhile, as I do this, I'm going to ask Mr. Benjamin to turn on his camera, and then from there we can proceed. Now, not Maxwell, rather, Benjamin. Benjamin is a computer science and computer or IT manager at a school called Gashora Girls in Rwanda. And he has been teaching computer science since 2009 when he was in college. I'm going to request some people to mute their mics kindly. All right, sorry for that. That happens most of the times. That he has been a computer science teacher and IT manager at Gashora Girls High School in Rwanda since 1999, since he was in college. From these days in college, but then from there he has developed an acute interest and love for educational technology, which he has kept, excelling in. He has been a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert, just like Maxwell, since the year 2017, and he has assisted thousands of teachers in Rwanda in bringing technology in the classroom, in effective pedagogical ICT integration into classroom practice using various methodologies. Mr. Benjamin has represented the Rwandan community and country in various fora and what we call conferences, both in France, where I first met him, and also in other places like Singapore, where he has been demonstrating the great work he has been doing in the classroom. Without much ado, let me now bring to you the amazing Benjamin from Rwanda. Welcome, Mr. Benjamin.
Yeah, good evening all. Thank you, Felix, for this introduction. As he said, I'm Benjamin Kuradusenge. I've been a teacher at Gashora Girls Academy. So Gashora Girls Academy is a science school which admits most talented girls in Rwanda. And most of them are of the age of 16 to 18. So they are teenagers. So I'm happy to be with you and share some best practices as far as ICT integration in teaching and learning is concerned. Thank you.
Welcome on board, Mr. Benjamin. And now, next to Mr. Benjamin, we have our amazing Daktari, Mr. Maina Wagioko. Now, everyone knows about Mr. Wagioko, but I'm going to read his profile shortly or briefly because I cannot finish it. Mr. Maina Wagioko is an innovative learning facilitator. We call him the learning facilitator, who is also a project director for Foundation for Learning and a global coordinator for Knowledge Innovation Exchange Project. Mr. Maina is a regional master facilitator and global online facilitator. Like I told you, he's a learning facilitator. He is so passionate on transformative pedagogies and andragogies. Tell us what andragogies are all about, apart from pedagogy that we are used to. Maina's mission is to create opportunities for all to learn as per their needs, passion, and growth opportunities. Mr. Maina learns from his interventions and shares his learning through conferences, panel discussions like these ones. He has been involved in presses, media presses. He has published various writings, and he has done subsequent preparation sessions to support teachers and learners alike in the classroom and in the classroom practice. Mr. Maina believes any learning has potential to make someone who they want to be. Now, he also doubles up as the professional learning specialist or leader or director at the Aga Khan Foundation or schools in Mombasa. But generally, he is our very own Daktari. Mr. Maina, the moment is yours. Sir, sorry, your mic is off. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Felix, for the introduction. And according to your time zone, how are you, everybody? This is a great opportunity, another opportunity for us to learn together. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Daktari. Very humble indeed. Now allow me to present to you another amazing educator, and this is Miss Herine Otieno. Okay, guys, I have a problem with my H, and you know why. So I'm going to call her Herine Otieno. Mostly I'll call her Madam Daktari. Our Daktari here, amazing as she is a Pan-African educationist at heart, and in practice, with over 15 years of experience working on evidence-based education interventions that are responsive to Africa's context, needs, and aspirations. She identifies with the transformative pedagogy, especially on its basis on teacher agency and teacher voice. For the first time, we have someone who is speaking not just about student agency and student voice, but now the teacher agency. She has worked with various organizations from various corners of this world, recently in Rwanda and still in Rwanda, but also doubling up in Kenya, supporting, STEM learning, and specifically in the area of mathematics in the continent. She runs the EduTalk Radio, EduTalk Afrique Radio, which she'll be telling us about in a few moments. Join us, Madam Daktari Herine Otieno. You'll also need to unmute, kindly.
Thank you for that. So just to say hello and good evening to everyone. Thank you, Felix, for that introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. Perhaps you have you've already adequately introduced me, but as you have mentioned, one of the hats that I put on as an educationist is the founder of what I consider as Africa's #1 online education radio, which is EduTalk Afrique Radio. And basically it's to do what we're doing here today, to create a space for continuous conversations on issues of education across the continent to allow for cross-pollination of ideas. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. There, our lady, our mathematician speaking from the heart, from the mind, and everything else she's got. All right, let's dive into this discussion, people. I'm humbled to be your moderator for tonight, and I'm going to do this the best way I can. We have a topic, we have a concern. The world over, everyone is trying to find transformative pedagogies. What can we bring to the classroom? What really works, especially in the African context? And one of the things that has come many times is, is there a difference between teaching and learning? What is this we are calling the innovative teaching? And what is the difference? Where is the gap between innovative teaching and innovative learning? And I'm going to now ask, in the round that I'm in the order of introduction, I'm going to ask each and every one of the panelists to just share on the basis of what they think innovative teaching and innovative learning is all about. It might look like simple, but this is a hard question for all of us. Let's go. Mr. Maxwell, let's do this. I think our mics. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Innovative teaching to me sounds like more or less using new strategies and or methodologies in teaching in a bit to improve the learning outcomes. Basically providing opportunities for students to learn skills beyond what's just in the textbook. Yeah. And therefore, it also gives opportunity for learners to imagine. As Albert Einstein, I quote one of his greatest quotes, that a real sign of intelligence is basically when one imagines. So we give students an opportunity to solve real world problems, challenges, and grow towards a sustainable future. Learning on the other side, innovative learning on the other side will be now having that atmosphere that has been created where students can now learn about new things regularly, question them, and think of new ideas on their own. So these two are really interdependent, the teaching and the learning, because they all synergize into what we call now innovative teaching and learning. Thank you.
That's amazing, Maxwell. There speaking about student agency in the part of on the part of learning and the teacher voice. And next we have Mr. Benjamin to share in on that same question: innovative teaching, innovative learning. Let's do this, Benjamin.
Thank you. Adding to what Maxwell has said, innovative learning. So the student should know that learning is dynamic. The way our parent or our previous people have learned, it's not the same way they have to learn. So with innovative learning, the students should be the center of the learning. Actually, the teacher should be there as a facilitator, as a guider, so to see whether the students are doing the right thing. But everything should come from the students. So Maxwell said it well, that the teacher should guide them with questioning them, help them with generating ideas which will take them to another level. So on another side, innovative teaching. So the problem we have as teachers, we are requested to teach in a way that we have not learned. So that means the way we were taught is different from the way we are going to teach. But we should come up with methodologies which will assist students to make sure that they are on top of the learning. So that means the teacher should come up with the methodologies where the teacher will give students tasks. Then the students are going to work on the tasks. Then the teacher will be there to check whether they are doing the right thing. If there are some corrections, the teacher is going to give corrections, and they have to, by the end of the task, they have to come up with a result or a conclusion. Then from there, I can call it innovative learning and innovative teaching. Thank you.
There you go. Now, the learning facilitator, bring this home. Thank you very much, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Felix. Now, when you talk about innovative teaching, by extension, you're talking about innovative learning, because the reason why it is innovative teaching is 3 R's: issue of relatability, relevancy, and response. So a teacher is able to receive a content which is prescribed by a curriculum body, but they contextualize that particular content with relation to real world, to the learning experience of the children, and then they construct learning experiences which are enriching, enhancing, and extensive, so that the learners can be able to conceptualize or make meaning of what is being taught. So it's a dual thing, that way you innovate, so that education is a social activity. So you innovate so that everybody can be engaged. You innovate so that differentiation and personalization can happen. You innovate so that you are a meddler in the middle, and you are sparking curiosity, and you are engaging teaching and learning through different methods, so that all learners are able to learn. So when learners are able to learn, they are able to set goals, they are able to know they are learning, they are able to reflect, then innovative teaching and innovative learning come together. Thank you.
That is our learning facilitator being the one that speaks about those areas. I like the fact that you talk about those R's, and I hear about innovative and what and what. Give me the R's once again: relevance, relatability, and
responsive.
responsive. All right. People, it's starting to to calm down. Let's continue getting these moments as we continue. We have our Herine. Do we have a chasm between these two? Just like Mr. Maina has tried to bridge the gap between the two. Ensure to unmute.
Thank you, Felix. A lot has already been said. I think as we have these conversations, one of the things that is remains at the fore of our conversation and is coming out from the speakers is the issues of context and the issues of the reality, and of course taking into account what our different teaching and learning environments are. When I think about innovation, and I think this has already come out, two keywords come out to me: improvement and change. So whatever I need, when I think through as a teacher, the process of imparting, facilitating, guiding, or monitoring behavior or knowledge in my day-to-day session, to the extent that I can come up with an idea of how to do it differently. And I'm not just doing it differently because I want to be fashionable or I want to be cool, but I'm doing it differently because I have identified potentially a gap that needs to be addressed, or I'm doing it differently because I have been able to identify that by doing that, I could be able to facilitate the learning much better. So for me, bringing together what has been said, the two keywords for me when we talk about innovation is change and improvement. And I think Benjamin said it in a different way: dynamism. Having said that, thinking about teaching and learning, and I like that we are specifically saying teaching and then we are saying learning, because sometimes we assume that when we have taught, learning has taken place, and that is not always necessarily the case. So we must keep interrogating and asking ourselves, in whatever we are doing, in whatever innovation that we are doing, is it facilitating learning? And as Dr. Maina put it, is it facilitating learning for all the learners? Because again, you could come up with an innovative practice that perhaps is working for a certain group of learners in your context and not another group. So that holistic sense and bringing in aspects of how differentiation might look like, because it might look like differently in our different contexts. So when I think about learning, partly what I'm looking at is, of course, a sense of understanding, conceptualization, as somebody talked about that, but also the sense of application. And I think that's why Dr. Maina talked about aspects like relatability. One of the things that will spark that sense of application is how much effort I put in class to actually make the learners or support the learners in relating the knowledge that I am presenting or what we're discussing with perhaps their day-to-day experience. So I think in that process, I've tried to talk about what learning for me, key aspects of learning, understanding and application of knowledge, the fact that teaching involves impartation. They still has, I know that facilitation is the most fashionable one, but in truth, there's still an aspect of impartation, because we have to think about our context. You get into a class, there's no textbook, there's nothing. So where do the students begin from? In terms of, you have to share some knowledge with them, but you share it and then facilitate the fact that they can connect it to other things and all that. So the issues of knowledge, but also when we're teaching, we're also looking at behavior. We are monitoring the behavior and all those aspects. So I'll stop there for now.
Wow, wisdom is oozing, guys. We have our amazing panelists speaking from the heart on what they are seeing in the classroom and what they are really doing, working with teachers and working with students alike. Allow me now to move to the second question in the interest of our time and also in the way that we are proceeding. And I keep reminding the members who are here, please, if you have any question, do post it on the chat as we proceed with this discussion. Dr. Herine Otieno, I'll come back to you and I want to just ask this question. Teaching and learning, what is the place of the teacher? Is the teacher at the center? And what is this thing we keep talking about, student-centered learning? You know, sometimes my teacher of chemistry would tell me, Nowadays, when I was in school that is, you would say that, nowadays learning is student-centered. I said, sir, I don't know what you mean, but am I supposed to go and explain something like in front of the other students? And that is what you would consider as such. That is what my teacher tried to do. But is the teacher at the center of innovative learning? Or who is it the student? What is this student-centered learning? Please clarify on this. And thereafter, maybe other panelists can also share in one or two.
Felix, we could have a whole week debating about or talking about student-centered learning and what it is and perhaps what it is not, and how it might look like in context A compared to context B. And you will realize that the word context keeps coming up. And I think what we're trying to say is that we must never find ourselves being boxed into a one-size fits all. If you look at education literature, especially that is coming from Africa, I know that there's a group, especially from South Africa, that has done a lot of work on issues related to student-centered learning, that has put some question mark in the way that we try to present student-centered learning. But having said that, I think one of the things, we would go back to the theories of learning and all that. Are we talking about constructivism? Are we talking about all this? But I think in very simple terms, I believe that a student has a role in the learning process. In fact, by just being before the students and talking to them and teaching them or sharing knowledge with them, that in itself does not necessitate or equal to learning. When you go back now to the science of learning and even draw on related areas like neuroscience, we will know and we will appreciate the fact that indeed there is a role. There's a role for the learner in learning, for learning to really happen. And I think what I identify with is that as part of what we are continuously doing when we highlight the place of student-centered learning and identify with that, is to perhaps take us away from an original thinking where perhaps we created an environment that seemed to assume or suggest that students came into classroom as empty slates and they knew nothing. But I believe that one of the core things that we're bringing in place when we're talking about student-centered learning is positioning the student to be an active participant in the learning process. So that as a teacher, when I come to class, I want to appreciate that this student is coming with prior knowledge, and I need to have a sense of what that is, and I need to know how I can tap into that to facilitate the conversation that would allow the teacher, the student to connect to that. So I would say in very simple terms that student-centered learning is about ensuring that students play an active role in the learning process. And you could activate that through different strategies. Maxwell had already said that, for example, as teachers, there's what we talk about, the art of questioning. How can I use questions in a creative way to ensure that the students participate in the learning process? They share ideas, they ask questions, they interrogate what it is that we are saying. And so at the end of the day, if you were to look at the voices that participated in the discussion or in the discussion, the students participated. But having said that, there are certain moments depending on what you're teaching, where you're teaching, it could be that there are some sessions where it could just be you talking. And that does not mean maybe it's just teacher-centered. Maybe you're just presenting some information that the students need to then go and engage with. And in the subsequent session, the students are going to play a more active role in that conversation. So we need to balance this and we need to evaluate this depending on where we are at, what it is we are teaching and how we're teaching. But the student has a role. They don't come as empty slates. They need to participate in that conversation.
Wow, wow, wow. So never again shall we try to think by just taking away as a learning facilitator, as we call ourselves, or as we would want to do so, that we can ignore the place of the student, but also the student is not empty as he comes. So it's not like, yeah, thank you very much, Herine, for sharing on that. Another panelist who wants to add onto that in 1 minute?
I think it's all about ownership and authorship. As Dr. Herine has talked about, that active participation, is it coming by coercion? Is it self-driven? so that if a student is partaking the learning experience through a desire to unlock something they don't know or to make a meaning of something, then if they are driving the show, we bring the ownership and authorship attributes. Then that brings in the students-centered learning. That's my perspective.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Daktari, for sharing that kind of wisdom and that, addition to matters to do with ownership for the learning and also the authorship. So the students are not being coerced to do anything. It is coming naturally. All right, we have Dr. Maina here. Yes, just shared on that, but I'm going to just ask him to share any relevant literature on what is possible for an innovative teacher. What has been said in the past in terms of that facilitation, in terms of that researching teacher and that learner who is able to take charge of their own learning, the self-guided instruction and self-guided learning. Mr. Maina, you can share a little bit about some of the literature that you might, have come across. And I will also allow the other panelists to share in on that in case they have something to add after Mr. Maina has spoken or Daktari. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you look at most of the theories which talk about innovative teaching, they give some approaches to teaching. And I'll just list the 3 CIID, meaning collaborative, concept-driven, contextualization, informed by assessment, inquiry-based, and differentiated. So these are just approaches to teaching. And what literature is saying is that for you to be able to teach this way, for example, facilitating productivity through classroom connection or concept-based teaching, you have to be an innovative teacher. And being innovative means creativity. And creativity is built by VOIP, something which is valuable, something which is original, something which is innovative, or something which is purposeful. So if a teacher is to be innovative, it means the teacher is proactively, as Dr. Herine is saying, listening to the learners, looking at the gaps, looking at the learning difficulties, and looking at teaching strategies, not prescriptive, but evidence-based, based on that particular context, and then changing the methods in the desire to improve the academic outcomes and addressing real problems in that particular situation. So literature says that innovation in education promotes critical thinking, promotes a sense of adventure, and promotes an openness to adapt. So the reason why you are innovating, and I'll give an example. If I'm teaching physics and I'm bringing gamification, I'm trying to bring gamification so that I can bring a sense of adventure to my learners, and therefore they have openness to adopt. So the innovation comes with a desire to be able to attract, to invite, to bring on board the learners at the same time, not for entertainment, but for a meaning-making process so that they can move from what they don't know, go through a process of meaning-making to what you want them to know. And therefore, you as an innovator, you have to, one, know the necessary tools that you need. Two, you need to be proactive in terms of knowing what kind of the learning challenges are your learners experiencing so that you can look forward proactively. You don't fix when you are there. You see if they are struggling in a particular area, what kind of solution or access or opportunity to present are you going to give them? So innovative teachers are naturally curious and they love to explore. If I teach today a lesson, I will not teach the same lesson tomorrow. I'll think, what happened in this lesson? What do I need to do? And that means they don't work in isolation, but they are connected through digital, through community-oriented, and they are towards, the reason why they are connected is they want to grow. So if you look at an innovative teacher, it says that there are people who seek out unique educational experiences so that it helps them to be able to satisfy the curiosity of their learners. There are people who understand what happens. Now, when you flip over to the learner, now, the learner who is innovative is a learner who is what we call as self-directed learning. A learner who listens to the teacher, knows or hears the learning outcome, then sets goals of how are they going to reach those learning outcomes, monitors their learning progress, learning to learn. They are able to reflect on what they have learned. They're able to adapt to different situations. They're able to develop what we call self-efficacy, to know who they are so that they can learn and they can adapt. So those are the two areas which I've looked at a lot of literature. It brings on that empowered learner who has desire to learn, reflects, knows their strengths, knows their weaknesses, but they leverage on feedback, which now becomes feed forward for them to grow. So at the expansive literature which I've looked at, and I'm going back to Dr. Herine, evidence-based, evidence-proven. One size does not fit all. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Members of this community, we want to, just appreciate the work that our panelists are doing. And, I like what is happening on the chat. Mr. Maina, Dr. Maina speaking on the place of reflective teaching, the place of student agency, the place of, the constructive and, constructionist approaches that are there, but amazingly putting out the specific things that we need to focus on, reiterating what other panelists are saying. Thank you, Mr. Maina, and thank you, Doctor, for sharing that with us. And we continue to learn and to grow. You might be wondering, where are these things happening from? Because for me, I only teach mathematics and I go home. This is what I do, man. I don't even care about all those researches. But Mr. Maina, Dr. Maina is speaking from the heart, from what other people have done together with Dr. Herine. And we are going to now to hear what is happening in the classroom. What is it that is happening? What has he done? This is Maxwell Kayesi. I met him when he was talking about teaching in a classroom where there is no computer, but he was talking about teaching beam. When the sun is going to, is it rise or to set? When it's setting, you take a photo with your phone, with your new, it was that time, it was IDEOS. Take a beam of the sun setting, and then you can bring that in the classroom, and you can use that concept of beams in classroom. So practically, like evidence-proven, evidence-based, like Dr. Maina said, we have Maxwell to tell us what really happens. How do you do this in the classroom? Bring it home in the classroom in Kakamega.
Thank you so much, Felix. A teacher is what determines the perception, the attitudes of a learner in any given classroom environment. Growing up in the remote areas of this country, I think I was taught physics by one untrained teacher. But because of not what he was trained to do, but how he taught it, is what gave me the motivation to go ahead and do physics at college and chemistry. So the teacher has a greater role in shaping the attitudes of a learner, and especially the interests of a learner in a particular learning area. And therefore, an innovative teacher is a teacher who is a resource seeker on behalf of the learners. Not all learners come from the same well-to-do backgrounds, as we know. We must look into differentiated learning. We must look into the cultural backgrounds of the learner. We must be, as an innovative teacher, be able to provide what we call social support to these learners, knowing that learners come into class having previous knowledge, learned differently from different experiences, from different individuals. So you as a teacher, you are trying now to do that diagnostic, to want to know, what does this learner know? How can I build on what he already knows? Or how can I improve on what he already knows? Or where are the gaps? that I can now come up with pedagogies to mitigate those inadequacies within the learner. And therefore, my number one approach to teaching in classroom, I dwell more on inquiry-based model of teaching, whereby I'm focusing the content experiences through activities that brings about that diagnostic evaluation, as I've already talked about it. I like calling it tuning in. I want to establish, what does this learner know before I give him what I know, or before I build on what he knows. What does he know? And then you give them an opportunity to discover now the new content based on what they know and new experiences so that they can gather information. And then you allow them to organize that knowledge, process the ideas in different ways. Remember, we talked about differentiated learning. One issue does not fit all. Also allow them to now make connections by drawing conclusions, articulating new understanding, and provide a point of comparison. And then you, as a teacher, you go out of your way by now giving the learners alternative experiences, where now you want to give them other avenues of inquiry so as they can gain insights. If you're teaching a concept of, let's say, rectilinear propagation of light, give them to go and research why probably maybe a ray of light through a small hole opening in the roof casts a very big light patch on the floor of the house. Let them go and figure out, can they apply this concept into real world scenarios, and then empower the students to act on what they have already learned on, to put the theory into practice. I like doing a lot of project work. When I teach a concept, for example, about light, I'll tell the students, now there's this thing we call a pinhole camera. Who can make a pinhole camera? I group them into groups, or I let them select their own groups, have a competition, a one double lesson competition in class. The best team that wins, I get a few mandazis for them. And this goes a long way in enhancing their knowledge retention and liking their own learning. And then there's one thing I also talked about, the real world problem solving learning. We have a lot of things that we as teachers can bring to classroom to help students relate what they are learning in the textbooks to what is happening around them. Talk about, when you want to talk about climate change, when you want to talk about healthcare, food insecurity, violence. Recently, we had the COP27 in Addis, talking about climate change and all that. Do you think, as a teacher, there are things that you can tell your learners to incorporate so that they can tackle issues to do with climate change? Let them look at things like their carbon footprint. Let them go out there, figure out how much do they contribute to the carbon emissions in this world. You'll be surprised what the knowledge they'll gain there, how it will even affect their attitudes within the classroom. When you talk about issues to do with the food insecurity, we have guys starving out there. There's hunger out there in this country. If your school is a boarding school, as an educator, there are those bins that those students pour in food every day. Why can't you give them a research to go and find out how much food is deposited in those bins every day? If it was to be converted into wasted food in a month or in a term in a school, how much of that food can go into feeding other people who need it? And you'll realize, even once they go through such a research, they're able to change their behavior. There'll be very minimal wastage of food at school level. The other thing is use of ICT. No, many teachers think using ICT, there's that complexity of, oh, I need very sophisticated gadgets, all that. Basic using of ICT, we have, of course, the analog ICT devices like the radio lessons and all that. And also we have the modern ones, of course, in the advent of Web 2.0 and all that. But the phone, the mobile phone, I'm very passionate about this. Every teacher has a mobile phone. That is a very powerful tool for you to use in order to change your pedagogy. Remember, we are dealing with Generation Z. This is people born between mid-90s all the way to 2010. They are the current students that we are teaching, but even there are some that we'll be teaching in the near future. We are calling the Generation Alpha. These are guys who've been born into technology world. they inhabit, navigate, and communicate within the society, which is both technologically rich and informationally rich. So you as a teacher, you need, first of all, to build your capacity. How can I use ICT in my pedagogy? A teacher who is not empowered to use ICT in pedagogy is denying these students the future. When you use the ICT provided tools that we have around as a teacher to maybe say motivate and engage learners, or even provide the personalized learning for these learners. Can you imagine that learner who missed school just because the parent could not afford to give him fare to school? He couldn't walk, so he misses school. And that means when you're teaching that very interesting topic, he did not attend to that. Make use of YouTube. Can you record your lessons in class using that phone that you use for chatting? Record your lesson, have it on YouTube, have a class YouTube channel, share their content that they can be able to interact with. Share there even content that before they come to class, maybe next week, you can share a video resource there. They go through it, discuss it. We talk about flipped classroom, right? So these are some of the things as a teacher, I feel so passionate about to try and engage the learners in all this. But again, there's one thing that we cannot forget: the digital divide, access to gadgets, poor connectivity, especially in those rural areas and marginalized that. How then can we mitigate that? We are not saying that you go fully into ICT integration, because it can be, there is the element of cost. You can do a blended type of teaching, where you can have some lessons, the physical ones, have some pre-recorded somewhere in a private room, share with them on WhatsApp, let them enjoy to use the Web 2.0 apps for learning. And then there's another aspect that is coming out very much to do with multiliteracies. Thinking of literacy in the modern way, whereby we are not just saying literacy is deriving meaning from text-based learning, but nowadays literacy has been changed a lot. Issues to do with technology, the future of work, visual communication, diversity. So you as a teacher, facilitate these learners to know what technology has to offer, what they can do with technology, what the future of work looks like. Diversity, because the work, the current globalization and all that, we are meeting people of different diverse cultures and all that. These learners will be interacting with all these people. So you as a teacher, how do you ensure that you are promoting these multi-literacies dimensions? And finally, one very key thing, you cannot do this alone. You need other teachers. Invite other teachers in your classroom. Have that peer review. Teach and let them give you feedback. Have those rubrics prepared. Even give the students to evaluate your lesson. Teachers, sometimes we fear that if you give the students opportunity to evaluate how your teaching is, they'll give you all those kinds of, but yes, review is positive. It helps you to improve as a teacher, both from review for feedback from learners and feedback from your peer or your colleagues. So teachers, let us have open classrooms. Don't be closing those doors when you're teaching that you don't want your supervisor to see you teaching. Invite your principal in those classes, subject experts in those classes, have guest speakers in your classroom, and you'll see how all these things are going to change. We can talk and talk much more, but yes, for now, let's do that.
Wow, from the heart, Mr. Maxwell Kayesi, award-winning educator from Kiambu, Nairobi, Kenya. You know, Maxwell, I feel like I need to take a break before I call Benjamin, because what you just said added what Dr. Herine said, Dr. Maina said. I'm so scared. People, we need to take a glass of water, because Maxwell says innovation is not about even technology. He talks about technology, the last thing, including multimodal or multi-literacies. Can you imagine? Technology is not what we are talking about when we talk about innovation. So people, let's take a break. I'm going to play a video. When I come back, I will invite Mr. Benjamin and tell us what tools and what challenges we're going to be talking about. Get a glass of water as we do this. Sorry, I'm going to share again. Take a glass of water as we do this.
STEAM Labs Africa was founded in the year 2017 with the common mandate of empowering young people and preparing the African continent with digital skills, financial inclusion or financial literacy and entrepreneurship, and environmental sustainability.
We are a non-profit organization that majors on educating students between 6 to 18 years old on the fourth industrial revolution technologies.
We have so many organizations working on STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. But we forget the arts bit of STEM education, hence the STEAM in STEAM Labs. And so for us, we believe that creativity is very important, especially in the sciences and when working on innovations and so on.
We focused mainly at the beginning on digital skills, but over time we've been able to add to other members of our vision in terms of environmental sustainability and aspects to do with financial inclusion, because we realize these are core to the business.
Most people think about STEM and STEAM in the matter of coding, technology, and just that. But then it goes beyond that. We're talking about science and astrophysics. We're talking about mathematics. We're talking about arts as well. And arts goes in like, that is humanities, English. It goes in hand with technology and science as well.
We do that by introducing different pathways where kids can just plug in, not just to tinker with tech tools, but to also learn how to solve problems so that they're prepared for, using the tech tools once they get to higher levels of education like university and so on.
The problem is that we have not been encompassing these people in our day-to-day educational lives.
Talking about the types of learners, we have those, the reading, the visual, the kinesthetic, and the auditory.
In our STEAM approach, our focus is mainly on the framework that we've adopted, and we call it the 3 Ps of education. We start with problem, where we contextualize our knowledge in the basis of the African challenges. Number 2 is the process. That approach now gives us what we finally call the product, or some people call it the prototype in the last stage.
We currently have a database of over 4,500 students and at least 900 educators around the country.
The sole goal of STEAM Labs is to inspire, inform, and empower the generations in Africa. First to students, to teachers as a secondary beneficiary, and finally to the community that we serve.
Welcome back. Thank you very much. That was a brief. As we come back to Mr. Benjamin to share with us on what is the challenge, what are the challenges, and what are some of the tools that we can adopt today. We know that Maxwell has already shared mainly on the practices, but also some tools that we could think of. But now we're asking Mr. Benjamin from Gashora Girls in Rwanda Academy to share what is possible with technology or without. What are some of the tools that we can innovate with, and what are the challenges? Would you share, Mr. Benjamin? Please unmute your mic so that you can hear you well.
Okay, thank you, Felix, for the video. Yeah, it was really wonderful and inspiring. So in this world of innovation and the creativity, there are a lot of tools that can be incorporated in a way, teaching and learning of everyday activities. So I have tried to categorize the technological tools and non-technological tools that can be used in our classes. So in technology tools, I also grouped them into 4 categories. There are tools that we use for presentations. There are tools we use for collaborating with our students or learners. There are tools that we use for assessing the learners. And again, there are some tools that we can use for learning, but they are for entertaining. So we make our classes enjoyable. So for presentation, I can say like the PowerPoint presentations, we have the tools like Sway, Microsoft Word, or PDF. Those are the tools we can use to present our teaching materials to the learners. So we also have collaborative tools like Microsoft Teams, like Google Classroom, Outlook. So those are tools we can use to collaborate with our learners as well as our fellow teachers. We have tools we can use to assess what the learners know and maybe come up with some feedback, like Google Forms, like Microsoft Forms, and other tools that we can use to assess our learners. So we also have to make our teaching and learning kind of enjoyable so that the student don't feel embarrassed, don't feel like they are in prison or in another place that they are not comfortable. We have to introduce game-based teaching and learning, like using Kahoot. You can prepare a teaching learning material that will engage students and are game-based, like Quizlet, Brickers. Those are the tools that we can use for teaching our subject in a funny way. So we use it to say that mathematics is hard for everybody, but this time you can use some tools and you make math as like a game where the learners can play as well as they are learning. So not only the technology tools that we can use for innovation, innovative teaching and learning, we also have there are some tools that we can use that don't require to have such technological tools, like Maxwell said about inquiry based. Inquiry based can help teachers to engage learners so that they create problems, they go through the processes of solving the problem and come up with a solution to that problem. We have project-based learning. You can teach the learners with the project. You simply expose to them a problem, then they go and find out. So from there, they will learn a lot of peer learning. So from some students are advanced, others are struggling. So let them pair them so that they can work together, and those who knows a lot can assist those who don't know a lot. Then they work on a given solution. Design thinking. This is a really nice tool that the teachers can introduce in their everyday teaching, so that the learners can go through different processes from the beginning of the problem to the end of the problem, so that they come up with different phases on how they are going to solve a given problem. Then storytelling. This is another tool that we can use in our class. For example, I want the learners to learn how the artificial intelligence works. We don't have internet, we don't have computers. So just let them come up with kind of a story. They come, they present, and from there they will have learned a lot of. So there is someone asked a question about how you can introduce innovative teaching when you don't have material. I also said for the underdevelopment countries. So even though we are in some countries are under development, so still we have some resources. Can you get me?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, my internet was cutting. So I was saying there are equipment or the materials we have, local available materials. We can go from them. then we create something or we use them as we are waiting others to come. So there is no excuse that you cannot innovate or you cannot teach with innovation because you don't have equipment. In whatever case, there are available materials for innovation that you can use. So most of the challenges are that we are not educated. We are not. We don't have skills on how we can design the learning materials which will foster innovation in the students. So this is I think where we should focus in our discussions. How can I use the local available materials to design a teaching material or a learning material in such a way that the learner will innovate as well as teacher will innovate? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Benjamin speaking from his personal experience, close to 20 years in education, innovating and becoming the innovative teacher while empowering his students to do the best. In the interest of time, I want to tell you guys, we cannot finish this discussion. This was supposed to get us, thinking. And this time, I'm going to invite some questions, unless there is a panelist who wants to add something. I have only 0 minutes remaining. So I'm going to ask 4 questions. I do ask the members of this community to continue ensuring their mics are off and their cameras are off to save data on data. And number 2, also to have that kind of coordination. So if you have a question, it is a moment for you to raise your hand. You can speak specifically to someone. But before we do that, allow me to, as you raise your hand, let me pick one question that I picked up. Some of them have been addressed as the time was going. I'm going to pick on one, which was directed to Daktari Herine. The question was about, let me just pick it. And Mr. Maina, Dr. Maina, thank you very much for responding to some of the questions. Let me just pick the Herine's one, then I can come to you. But I'm asking if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Just something to clarify that has come up. Mr. Ongeri, you had asked a question about countries that without a lot, with challenges to do with technology in the countries. But I'll allow you to ask as I find this question. Mr. Ongeri. You can unmute and speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Felix. I'm challenged that I've been understanding innovation in a different way, that innovation only means the technology part. But from listening to Benjamin, I've heard that it's not only innovation, it's not only on ICT, it can be other ways. But in most cases, I've attended some interviews, but when this issue of innovation comes, they only concentrate on the use of ICT. And in most cases, you find in our country, and it's one of the underdeveloped. We try to use these tools, if you try to use these tools like collaborative tools, sometimes they do not work. Also to the students, which we normally teach. Thank you so much. So I was asking, how can we tackle this challenge so that everybody can understand that ICT is not only the only way of innovation? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to throw this to Dr. Maina. He is so happy because you need to be in that panel to correct the panelists who are interviewing you.
I think sometimes when that question is thrown to you is you to understand the focus. The reason why they ask such question is to check how do you facilitate teaching and learning in the classroom. Now, I like what Benjamin has said. For example, the home group and the visit specialist group technique in a class, which is cooperative learning approach. If I'm teaching 5 concepts, I can have 5 groups in class, and then I take each group to study 1 concept. And then I mix them up, and each person in the group shares what they had learned there. That is an innovation, because it is giving the learners voice, it is giving the learners choice, it is bringing confidence, it is bringing respect, because if I read topic A and you read topic B, you need to listen to me so that I can also listen to you. That is called a cooperative learning approach. And there are many, many approaches which you can have. They are non-technology. So I know where you are coming from, and I know what the panelists do. But when you are asked such a question, it's just to think through, why is this question being asked? The key point is, are the learners learning? And we had, you can be teaching, but they're not learning. So it's you to think, how do you create learning opportunity? Benjamin talked about storytelling. We also use role play. So I'm teaching about sources of light, and I tell you are a newscaster and you're supposed to share the sources of light. So the child becomes a newscaster. Newscasting is real life situation. Newscasting, they have seen people doing it, but then they are preparing that topic and present. That's an innovation. So it's a matter of learners being engaged, learners learning. That is the key thing about what we do every time. And that's why innovation is about us looking for solutions to the challenges we are having in our classes. One can be technology. Two can be no technology. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Daktari, for that awesome answer and bringing in the cooperative learning. I normally see panelists doing that, by the way, when they have given, not panelists, rather presenters or people who are doing webinars, they just give us breakout sessions, whether it is online or even physical, and then they give us 4 areas like causes of Majimaji Rebellion, the effects of Majimaji Rebellion, the story about Majimaji. I'm in history now, and I'm actually teaching that lesson. The students will actually look for the books, and they will even Google if they have a phone, and then they will actually bring the answers as they present, and everyone learns. Thank you for cooperative learning. Now, if you have that question, by the way, let me just say this. When I'm called for an interview and there is something I need to say, I actually say, actually, guys, this question is a good one, but I think I have a different way of looking at it. Innovation can be in digital or not digital. Because let me tell you an example. Cooperative learning, this one they learned from Dr. Maina. And then there is inquiry-based learning, which is connected to project-based learning. That is innovation. I don't use technology. And I actually use technology also. I use Kahoot, and you can throw in those things, but also educate those people because they're going to interview another person. And that's how actually you ace your interview. Thank you, Dr. Maina. We have a question for Dr. Herine Otieno, if you can hear me. The question is from Mr. Ovin Nyarango. Mr. Ovin asks the question on for you to, actually it's a request for you to speak about the South African research, the research that was done in South Africa, just to highlight a little bit about that research. Doctor? Dr. Herine? Right, Dr. Herine, I don't know if your mic is off, or maybe you could unmute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So what I think, hello?
Yes, please proceed.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I think what I'm saying is that there's a whole plethora of, it's a whole department. I would have to pull out the actual papers. But basically, if you look at the issues of student-centered learning, I think the way it has been presented in perhaps the way most of us have heard about it is that we've heard about it in a way that we think it is not problematic. And it is, this is the way, if you tell somebody, draw what student-centered learning, or even few times I've talked to people, draw what CPC is for those of these student teachers are facilitating and all that. But I'll give you an example of, and it's not just South Africa, I'll give you an example of a research paper. Again, in this case, it is from the US. And in the US, they have diversity of students. And it's not just US, UK and the rest. Part of what is talked about is that when you're talking about some of these pedagogical practices, they may benefit some students more than other students. So you have to have that at the back of your mind. So for example, you go into the class and you are creating or you're expecting this environment where students are supposed to participate in the conversation. Students are supposed to ask questions. Students are supposed to present what they think about a matter. Now, that kind of teaching has also a cultural nuance. If a child is coming from a house or an environment where that is how they are in their home, in their home, people contribute to conversation. This child was brought up in that they can ask questions, they contribute to conversation. That child will be very, very easily tap into that kind of teaching. However, if a child is coming from an environment, a cultural environment where most of the time the knowledge came from who was the person who was seen to be senior, and the child was only allowed to ask questions or hardly allowed to ask questions, that child will find it problematic when he or she goes to a class and the general expectation of learning is that this child is supposed to ask questions. And those of us who have had an opportunity perhaps to learn outside the African context know the kind of almost culture shock you get in a classroom that is largely students, and you can almost think this class is rowdy. This class is not disciplined. How come somebody is talking and the other person is talking and the other person is talking? So those are some of the things that we have to question. In fact, this paper, and I know I have referred to it in one of my research papers, the professor was talking about the students being asked to participate or to say, and the students will sit back and say, you tell us. Because the way they have been trained is that the teacher is supposed to tell them. And now, therefore, they will find this new aspect of the teacher demanding that they participate in conversation intimidating. It would actually reduce their sense of efficacy. And if the teacher doesn't notice that and just continue barreling through with this issue of facilitation, students are supposed to participate, you may lose that child. So those are some of the things that some of the African scholars are interrogating. When we talk about student-centered learning against the African culture, where students are coming from a very hierarchical kind of environment, well, how do you mitigate that? How do you ensure that you do it in a way that is perhaps progressive, but also supportive of the culture? Because you have to look at pedagogy also through the lens of culture. So I would just say that those are some of the conversations going on among some of the scholars from Africa, but it's not just an African conversation. There's a lot of talk even in some of these other Western countries about the cultural capital that students come with, the know-how, the practices that they come with that might make them fit better with certain pedagogies, and actually how some of the other students might actually be left out by you trying to adopt this progressive pedagogy without using a cultural lens. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Daktari. People, can you hear that it is not everything that we read on the internet we can bring into our classroom? It can actually break our class. We have to be very careful. And that's why the place of African educators and researchers have a big role, in trying to contextualize what we're seeing online in the place of our class. And so, Daktari, thank you very much. There is so much you can learn from the outside world there, but we have to bring it back into our classroom and see what is possible. Otherwise, we'll be trying to force our children to be other people, and that is not fair. We have to end this session, people. I have only 2 minutes to do so. So I'm going to ask Mr. Mbaye to ask his question, David Mbaye, sorry. And then from there we can, I see so many people now. Yes, I'm going to give David, and then I can see what is possible. David, in that order. Please unmute and speak.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on this platform. I don't have a question as such, but I wanted to appreciate the forum because I've run a few issues, especially on innovation. I think especially from Mr. Kayesi, I've learned that the mobile phone can be a very good device, especially in teaching and learning. And I think I want to applaud that this forum is good, and we want to, maybe as we move forward, to be more engaged so that we get more ideas. Otherwise, God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
thank you.
David. Thank you very much for speaking and applauding our people, our panelists rather, and we are really grateful. going to give to more people. I don't know how to manage this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Maxwell, thank you very much. There, highlight coming there. Jordan Hosman. Very quickly.
Felix, right, as Jordan comes in, I'm going to point out to you to put a gender lens to your giving questions. There are ladies' hands were up.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. I'm just following the order. After that, I'll come to a Lady Immaculate. That is the order that I'm receiving on my side. Thank you. I like it that we make it so easy. All right, Jordan. Okay, Jordan seems to be having a challenge. Now I'm going to go to the lady then. Jordan, when your mic is ready, let me know. You can come off mute and then you can speak. But then in the interest of time, let me pick Miss Immaculate Mayaya to speak. These are ladies themselves.
Thank you very much, Felix.
Yes, please.
Okay, mine is not really a question, but an observation that I've made for a very long time. Dr. has just mentioned about the pedagogical practices. When using them, they should differ because our learners are very different. Now, considering the cultural differences, in Kenya, when you are in class, of course, learners are supposed to be quiet. That is when everyone thinks that learning is going on simply because they are quiet. Yet when you go to other places, like she said, because of the cultural differences in other classes, you'll tend to assume that the class is rowdy. So this is when I want to know the difference. When do we say a class is rowdy? When do we say a teacher is lacking control in class? And when do we also say that now learning is taking place? Okay, individually, I wouldn't like my class to be very quiet because I'll assume there is no learning. When children are talking, they are giving out their views, they are exchanging ideas. That is when I assume learning is going on. But to another person, they'll think that I'm unable to control my class. So kindly give us some light on that.
Herine.
I think that's, again, I think there should be times learners can be quiet for their own self-study and regulation, because there are times they need to engage personally with the content, because again, there'll be moments, even like when they're doing exams or whatever, when they have to actually be able to sit quietly and read and track what it is they're reading. So for me, the way I look at it, I'll just give one, I would say what I qualify as an innovative practice. One of the things we've been doing in Rwanda recently is that we created, with the support of the policymakers and the leaders, there was an opportunity to create an hour or an afternoon where teachers are supposed to do CPDs. But then the question was, what are the learners going to do that time? So because we're working on issues of science, we decided we're going to create something called Science Hour. Now, and this is something I wanted to reinstate here, that learning is a skill, just like teaching is a skill. And I think in our part of the world, we don't pay too much attention to looking at learning as a skill that needs to be taught, that needs to be fostered. Somebody talked about self-directed learning. When you look, and I'm using this to answer your question, when you look about that, when you are talking about self-directed learning, next to it is something called self-regulated learning. So the two, actually, there's an interplay. And when you're talking about self-regulation, you have to regulate your mind to concentrate, to block off anything that could be distracting to the teacher or the content that you're trying to engage with. But you also have to regulate the process of making connections to that. But there's also what we call environmental regulation around you and all these things. So when is a class learning? It could be either. There could be a lot of conversation going on because they're discussing and they're trying to make meaning or share ideas and everything. And every class should have those moments. But just like we did with Science Hour, there are moments when we wanted the students to be talking to each other in their groups. And of course, you know, even in group work, it does not mean learning is taking place. You have to check what kind of conversation are they making meaning to each other? Can they ask each other the right questions and all that? So there should be action. There should be, it can be loud. But then I think it's also important, and this is what we do the science hour, that there are moments that we wanted the students just to sit quietly, sit down quietly on their own, perhaps even before they come into the group to share and to participate in that conversation, so that they come with something into that conversation. So I wouldn't say it's an either and or. I would say that you manage that process and you're able to work with your students to build both capacities. Capacity to sit down quietly with the content and engage with it quietly, because there are moments that will be required of them, but also the room to have time to engage with each other. But let's again be careful that the fact that there's so much noise does not mean necessarily or loudness that is taking place. Work alongside them and listen to the kind of conversations, train them on how to follow up on each other's presentations, asking questions, and interrogating and all that. So I don't think it's an either or, but culturally, yes, we always say keep quiet.
Yes, there you go. Culturally, that is the word. So you have to go and look at your context. Thank you. Look at it, Immaculate. I am an accomplice of my class is loud, because my wife told me, because she's a teacher, that the class is as loud as the teacher. So we just go there and we do what you have to do. Thank you very much. My time is up, but I'm going to give Julius and Nira. Nira, I can't pronounce your name fully, but it's Clementine. It's the lady there. Julius and then Clementine. Julius?
Yes.
Very quickly. Yes, please proceed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The two areas actually I want to highlight on how Mr. Maina and also Maina and Benjamin have highlighted, and that is good. It's all about innovation in class. When we talk about innovation, innovation is all around. It's something that is all around, whereby having maybe you are in class and we're involving your learners in a certain task. Whatever you are expecting, maybe what you have thought to do, learners will have to think. So it is both round, that is to the learners and to the teachers, the facilitators, I mean, innovation can be seen. It's not, as Maina has said it clearly, that it can be technology or non-technology. So we should not basically think of technology all time. We need also to focus on non-technology ideals, so that at least we facilitate our learning. That's something which I've captured so well. And then secondly, when we talk about what Madam has said right now concerning that is in a classroom situation whereby we are talking of maybe it's for a class to be healthy, a healthy class, to show that the class there's learning taking place. It is not necessarily that they keep quiet. You know, by keeping quiet, it means there's nothing that they're doing, unless maybe this is an examination session whereby you are expecting the teacher for learners to keep quiet as they take the exams. But a healthy class, it must be very, very interactive. So a healthy learning, it must be interactive. That is the side of the teacher and side of the learners, basically on the content. Otherwise, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Julius. Amazing comment there, two of them. And let your class have people speaking. Otherwise, this is not a jail and you have to lose some control as a teacher. Miss Clementine, I will conclude with you, Irene. Okay, Clementine.
Thank you very much. I'm Clementine. Now, I thank all who participate in this conversation, because I got many things like using ICT integration in classroom, where I found that the ICT can motivate learners to participate actively in the classroom. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is Clementine. Clementine, are you from Rwanda? I'm just going to label you. Sorry.
I'm coming from Rwanda, Ngororo district.
Wow, Ngororo district in Rwanda. Thank you very much. And it is at that point I'm going to ask my panelists to do their final submissions. in the interest of time. Irene, please allow me to just not pick that up. And if it's possible, you can just say on the chat, if it's a comment or it's a question, I can see what I can do. But with me now is Maxwell. 30 seconds, your parting shot.
Teacher as a resource. You're a great resource. Inspire. Use yourself to give light to these learners. Thank you.
That's Maxwell, an innovative educator, transforming nations one student at a time. Mr. Maina, doctor.
A teacher is a learner. You are supposed to be the meddler in the middle, sparking interest and curiosity. Therefore, all the time you need to innovate. Thank you.
This is a clarion call to innovation from Dr. Maina himself. Thank you, sir. Mr. Benjamin Kuradusenge.
Thank you. Bill Gates said, there is no technology which will replace teacher. Only teachers who resist to technology will be replaced. So let's grab that chance that we have to innovate for us to foster learning in our learners. Thank you.
Think that not as a threat, but as a challenge for you in the classroom. Tonight, from Gashora, all the way in Rwanda, Benjamin speaking from his mind, from his heart. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for having you. And now, our Daktari, the daughter of the two worlds, Rwanda and Kenya, Dr. Herine Otieno. Your final submissions, please.
Talking about innovation,
Yes.
we've said that the key words for innovation is change and improvement. And I think some of the things that we can do better to be more innovative is something that has been written much about, called the discipline of noticing. I am in class. What are you noticing? What are you seeing? What are you observing? We have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Let's use our eyes a lot in class. Notice, so that you notice the gaps, you notice the strength, and that if you build that with the aspect of reflection during teaching, after teaching, and when you bring this together, I think it will always push you to want to change something for improvement, not necessarily with the technology. The C part of ICT is communication. It doesn't have to be a gadget. Thank you.
Change and improvement closes the conversation today from Dr. Herine Otieno, the daughter of the two worlds, speaking from the heart. Thank you very much. That has been our awesome conversation tonight, members. I've been Mr. Felix Malombe, a teacher of science and mathematics, supporting teachers with educational technology and innovation under STEAM Labs Africa, where we transform educational practice, empowering generations. Now, check on the chat. I'm going to place a chat link, which you can join our WhatsApp group that we are building as a community of practice. Please do join. You are welcome to be part of that. And at this juncture, allow me to ask everyone, guided by our amazing organizer, Joel Kahindi, who we could not do this without, to take a photo. The photo moment is here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. It is clocking 1 hour and 40 minutes since we started. Usually we do 1 hour and 30 minutes when we are stretching so much. And when we do not have a lot, it's 1 hour. We might need to change a few things. All right, I'm going to stop spotlighting our members, our leaders. Remember to go to online spaces and share your experience of what you are learning from the EdTech and innovation space and be part of the change that we are calling one another. So a photo moment for all of us. Thank you very much, everyone. And muting them, not unmuting your mic, unmuting your, you don't can't unmute your camera. Bring your camera on. Thank you very much. All right. Taking a photo. The photo moment is coming. Please do remember to go and in your Twitter, in your LinkedIn, in your Facebook, identify with STEAM Labs Africa. STEAM Labs Africa is we are STEAM Labs. That is our tagline for every of our social media platforms. And I'm now going to take the first photo with your permission. There are 2 pages of photos now. My screen is a bit small, but if you can also take a photo when I count from 3, 2, 1. Photo 1 and then photo 2. Just a moment, I'm getting ready. Yes, thank you very much for honoring us with your presence. Do join our community. Let's do this together. Now, photo number 1. All right, photo, the first photo. Going to count in the count of 3, 2, 1. You smile. 3, 2, 1. And everyone is smiley, smiley. Thank you. That's the first photo. I'm going to go to the next page because we are too many of us, guys. Going to go to the second page, and to ensure that everyone is captured, going to do another page. And this is the second page of amazing educators from across Africa. 3, 2, and 1. That has been an awesome session there. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm now going to call Mr. David Ogonshla from Nigeria to close this session with a prayer. Mr. David, if you are here with us up to this moment. Mr. David, are you there? All right. If you don't have David, then I'm going to ask Maimuna Osman to close this session with a prayer, or Hatman Mangauri. All right. Do you have that? Maimuna or Osman?
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Are you getting me?
Yes, you can go ahead and lead us in a prayer.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, the master of the day of judgment, to you only do we seek help, and to you only do we look for assistance. We say Amen, 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 Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, amazing educators. We now take a break till January 2023 when we convene back here for another amazing session. Maybe a webinar will be communicated to. Thank you and have a blessed night, wherever you are, in the evening, in the afternoon, or at night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, amazing panelists.
Merry Christmas.
Amazing. We can sing that song. I wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, there are students somewhere. Wow, thank you very much. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Yeah.